Imagine its reaction if it could see itself, realise itself inside this thing. They'd go insane.
So they cut out the one thing that makes them human.
Because they have to.
Why am I cold?
Oh my God, it's alive. You can feel.
I broke the inhibitor. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Why so cold?
Can you remember your name?
Sally Phelan.
You're a woman.
Where's Gareth?
Who's Gareth?
He can't see me. It's unlucky the night before.
You're getting married.
I'm cold. I'm so cold.
It's all right. You sleep now, Sally. Let's go to sleep.
What you've just listened to is an extract from Age of Steel. This is the scene in which the Doctor finds a Cyberman and disables it, and finds out this Cyberman was a woman called Sally. Sally was about to get married, and unfortunately she was turned into a Cyberman before she even got the chance to be married. The Doctor puts her out of her misery, and it's one of the most harrowing scenes involving the Cybermen, and in my opinion one of the best scenes involving the Cybermen overall. For this video, we are going to be discussing what makes the Cybermen such a scary enemy and why they are some of the best monsters in Doctor Who. When it comes to Doctor Who monsters, most people can probably agree that the Daleks are probably the most beloved. However, the Cybermen do come a very close second, and in my opinion, the Daleks aren't as scary as the Cybermen. Why is this? And what makes the Cybermen so scary? Well, in this video, we're going to be discussing these points. We're going to be discussing some of the behind-the-scenes lore behind the Cybermen, as well as the in-story lore of the Cybermen. The concept of being transformed into these things and becoming this emotionless husk is rather terrifying on its own, but the lore and behind the scenes makes it even more terrifying. The whole concept of the Cybermen themselves is what makes them scary. So let's discuss, shall we? Cybermen first appeared in The 10th Planet. The 10th Planet is a William Hartnell story and was in fact his last. In fact, it was his Within a Generation story. Here we find out that the Cybermen came from a planet called Mondas. Mondas is essentially the 10th missing world and is a clone planet of Earth. It's Earth but upside down, essentially. And Mondas was a far more volatile planet than Earth, and as a result the Cybermen had to be created to adapt to such surroundings. The first story of the Cybermen is quite terrifying in terms of the design of the Cybermen, and is still probably my favourite design of the Cybermen. The Mondasian Cybermen are like mummies almost, except you can still see parts of their human nature. In fact, there's this one moment where the Cybermen look closer to the camera and you can still see the human eyes behind it, showing that they still have parts of their humanity there, but it's completely gone. We find out from the Mondasian Cybermen they converted their entire planet into, well, Cybermen. The Cybermen themselves are built to be immune from diseases, emotions, and anything else for that matter. In fact, in a strange way, the Cybermen are like twisted doctors and nurses. They want to heal people in their own twisted way, to convert them into this cybernetic device, this cybernetic armoring that can protect them from diseases and illnesses, from injury, from any pain. But of course, it's through excruciating pain that they transform these people. A similar story takes place in Age of Steel and Rise of the Cybermen, in which a man called John Lumick, who is dying, wants to convert people into Cybermen as a way to protect them, as a way to create a happy society, this twisted happy society where everyone is the same, where there is no feeling, where there is no pain, or where there is no emotion. And the irony is, there's a lot of pain behind these metal shells. There's a lot of pain behind these eyes that you see nothing through. Through emotional inhibitors, the Cybermen don't have any emotion. However, as soon as these emotional inhibitors are taken out or turned on, the Cybermen immediately feel all the emotions in the world. And just imagine what it's like to be a normal person one day and then to be transformed into a metal husk the next, and to see yourself as that. Nothing, just nothing. Unable to take your own appearance, they end up killing themselves because of how excruciating it must be. In Big Finish's spare parts, there was a character called Yvonne. Yvonne is taken to the factories, however she isn't fully converted into the Mondasian Cybermen, and she returns home to her father and her brother, and she asks for tasks. However, because she is not fully converted, she starts crying and whimpering and goes on a little bit of a rampage in the house before finally dying from the horrific injuries that has been inflicted on her. The irony of the Cybermen trying to heal people by trying to convert them and turn them into perfect beings, by trying to make them immune from all diseases, all sorts of pain and suffering, they unintentionally create more pain and suffering. Family members are split apart and transformed into such horrific machinations. In terms of politics, the Cybermen were actually based on communism, and it's quite interesting when you listen to Spare Parts just how the Mondasian society came to be, and how it would eventually become the homeworld of the Cybermen. In Mondas, they overthrew their leaders and established a new society, a society where everyone could be treated like the same. Just like communism, Cybermen want everyone to be the exact same, nothing more than just the same grey face over and over and over again. In fact, the Cybermen story can also be in contrast with modern day politics. The constant divide with people these days, and especially on Twitter, where if you have even the slightest different of opinion or the slightest different of anything, then you are considered inferior, that you need to be upgraded, you need to become just like us. This mentality that everyone needs to be the exact same is quite terrifying in an aspect, and the Cybermen take this to the literal extreme, where everyone does become the exact same, the same voice, the same look, the same everything. If everything had become the same, then everything would become boring. What makes humans fantastic in the Doctor's eyes is the fact that we are all so very, very different. And the Cybermen take that away. Everyone becomes the exact same, a copy of a copy of a copy. And it never seems to end. What makes the Cybermen even worse is just the whole atmosphere that they bring. The dread of being converted into a Cyberman must be absolutely terrifying, and the after effect is just as worse. You become the same thing as the monster that just captured you. The Cybermen also have a far more terrifying aspect to them, something which a lot of people don't tend to pick up on, but something that I certainly have noticed, and that is they're the type of monster that think they're doing the right thing. What I mean by this is that unlike other monsters, say for example the Daleks or the Sontarans, who do things in their own favour and are more evil, to say the very least, the Cybermen on the other hand think that they're actually doing the right thing. The Cybermen, especially the Mondasian Cybermen, believe that if they take people and they transform them into Cybermen, then they'll be perfectly safe, that emotions are a weakness, that having any sort of feeling or pain is problematic. And by taking that away and stripping it all down and just making you a immune creature that just walks around aimlessly doing menial tasks, therefore you are perfect, therefore you are safe. As I said before, the Cybermen are like nurses and doctors, and this can also come back into another behind-the-scenes feature, which is the Cybermen themselves are based on a lot of amputations and the replacements of body parts using metal framing. In real life, sometimes if you lose a limb, you can often get a replacement, this replacement being some sort of artificial hand or leg or anything of the sorts. And the Cybermen are in many ways just like that, except here they've replaced pretty much their whole body. There are very few parts which have been kept, such as the brain or maybe the head as a whole. Most of the body has been stripped down and replaced by circuitry and a metal framework, something that just doesn't appear human. And that is probably one of the more terrifying aspects. The humanity of the Cybermen has just been stripped away. They are nothing more than just a husk, a emotionless face staring right at you and telling you to get upgraded or to be converted to become just like them. Imagine that, your last few moments as a normal human being told by a Cyberman that you will become like us. Cyber conversion is often a very painful process. We see in Age of Steel and Rise of the Cybermen that the cyber processing is pretty painful, involving saw blades, knives and syringes and all sorts, cutting you open and flaying unavailingly, most likely, it removes all the unimportant organs and replaces it with a metal framework or some sort of circuitry in between. With the Mondasians, you are wrapped up in more or less a fabric and mummified, except this mummy is still alive. This mummy still has someone breathing underneath, someone that is still able to talk, or at least talk in the sense that it opens its mouth and some sort of radio comes out of it. The Mondasian Cybermen are perhaps the most terrifying of them all, because they still have that slight humanity to them. You can tell they were people once upon a time, whereas modern day Cybermen aren't like that. You just think they're more or less robots. So picture this, you're just an ordinary person, but you're being taken by these emotionless bodies, and they take you to an area where you can hear people screaming as they're being transformed into more of these emotionless, soulless drones. And eventually there's more of them than there are you, and you're put into a chamber where you are forced to be transformed into a Cyberman. It must be a pretty terrifying thought, but the idea that everyone would become just like that the whole world will just become the same sort of place where everything and everyone is under one rule, one idea, one simple look. The teardrop look of a Cyberman is quite iconic. In many ways, it's almost picturesque. It's almost imagery of a person losing their humanity, them crying out one last time before they are transformed into the Cyberman. Perhaps the most terrifying aspects of the Cybermen are the fact that they look so emotionless, that their humanity has been completely stripped away. Everything that we can think of has just disappeared. All the fun, all the emotions, all the adventures we could have in life is gone, neutered completely, transformed into nothing more than a metal husk, a metal shell that has no emotion. The ideology based on communism, the fact that everyone has to be the exact same, that everyone has to have this shared same belief, this shared same looks, is pretty horrifying. We can look to cosmetic surgery in real life and see how people try their best to look perfect. The fact that they try to make themselves look better than everyone else, this idea of converting your body and transforming it into something that it isn't anymore. The Cybermen take this to the extreme, and that is probably why they are so terrifying. There's a lot of it that relates to real life. Obviously, real life isn't as bad as, say, everyone being turned into mechanical beings, or worse, the Mondasian types, but it's still there. There's still this sense of dread, this dreadful ideology, this dreadful look, this dreadful mentality that everyone should be perfected, that everyone should be immune to everything, that everyone should be emotionless in order to live a fulfilled life. But what is a fulfilled life if you have nothing to go for? If there's no emotion, there is no feeling, there is no pain, there is no adventure. Well, the Cybermen strip that away, and that is probably why the Cybermen are so terrifying. They take the idea of us being human and completely reduces it to absolutely nothing. And the worst part is, they are still human, and they still think that they're trying to help you, when reality is, they're making you far worse. That is my video for today. I hope you enjoyed. Sorry if the audio is a little bit off, but hey, I hope you enjoyed this. Maybe we can talk about more Doctor Who monsters and discuss what makes them so great. This is Why the Cybermen Are Scary, and this is me signing out.